Hey, that's pretty good. The Raptors defeat the Indiana Pacers 130 to 122. Scottie has a triple double, his fourth of the season. Grady Dick plays incredible. They stave off like a really nice scoring game, creation game from Pascal, an insane shot making game from Matherin, which was like nuts to watch. And here's the thing, ladies and gents, they got pizza. We've been waiting over 2 months, almost 3 months for the deliverance of this pizza party. I don't even know if the original quote promised a pizza party. It was just like out to dinner, but then somehow it became a pizza party. And here we are, ready to snack on some pizza. Biggie35 says, I say we turn this chat into a discussion for best pizza in Toronto. I'd like to see a decision made by chat by the end of this podcast. What a game for the Raptors. I think there's always, I can't remember what exactly Caitlin refers to it as, but there's something that happens. It's like stat maxing or whatever the hell you want to call it. She'll have a term for it once she's in, but oh my goodness. The Raptors, they play these Pacers pretty well, 130 to 122. I mean, RJ with 24 points, 5 assists, Scottie with 21 points, 5 blocks. 5 blocks, 12 rebounds, 12 assists. Pirtle, who only played 21 minutes in this game, and I was wondering, like, are they tanking? Why isn't he playing? Type thing. He has 15 points, 4 assists, 10 rebounds, and they started using him as this release valve for post entries to Scottie. My favorite one was just they run a pick and roll. Scottie seals his man, starts cornering to the inside. You swing the pass to the opposite side above the break, and then you have this really great post entry opportunity. You have a great angle from a really tall player, and Jakob straight into Scottie. Great little wrinkle on the pick and roll that I love that they do. Gary was so in this game. He almost made Halliburton touch the ground, going after, playing some defense one-on-one, hit a jumper. And Emmanuel quickly, 19 points, a little bit of scoring pop. That was nice to see, especially kind of in transition. And he finishes with 19 points, 2 assists. Of course, we think, we obviously realize that Scottie is the biggest motivator for the offense, and he was the guy producing like a lot of the looks. The Raptors are running a ton of off-ball actions in this game for like an RJ Barrett, for like Grady Dick, for Gary or Emmanuel quickly, and it's been awesome to see. People in chat talking about Jakob tweaked his ankle. Yes, I forgot to mention. Obviously, when he hadn't played, I was like, wait, what happened here? And he did tweak his ankle. We're waiting on updates on that from, I think, Raptors PR, etc. Bruce Brown, quiet game. Been a lot of those, let's be honest. Ochai Agbaji, 13 points, 2 assists, 2 rebounds. Pretty good. He comes from the corner straight to the bucket. And it's kind of funny. The Raptors, was it Bruce Brown who got cut right by Obi Toppin in the game on February 14th, if I remember correctly? But anyway, Ochai comes out of the corner. He just caught a lob from Kelly. Kelly, mid-dribble pickup, sprayed it to the corner. Huge lob. That's awesome to see. And then Grady, obviously, 4 of 4 from downtown. I think he's now 48% over his last 17 games as a Raptor. He's over 36% on the season. He's doing pretty well. 7-9 overall, 18 points. Guess this, 2 offensive rebounds in this game, 2 assists, was able to turn, a pin down not only into a shot for himself, which is something that obviously is something we want to see from a great shooter, but he comes off, the guy tries to shoot the gap, little pump, put it down, come into the lane, finish at the bucket. And that's something too over his last 17 games. I believe he was, I think, 18 of 25 at the rim, which for 75%. Now I think he would be about 20 for 27. So this is something that everybody should have been paying attention to, is like the external stuff that Grady does really well. I talked about it before Grady got drafted. I think like when it came to Kobe and Grady, I think I was the newsbreaker on their workouts with the Raptors. As far as I know, I don't think anyone beat me to that punch. I've been big on Grady for a really, really long time. And it's really nice as a guy who loved his game, loved so much of the peripheral stuff, to see it kind of popping off. And as we can see, it's a tremendous fit next to Scottie Barnes. For anybody wondering, if I look a little sweaty, I'm in Mexico. There are dogs barking like crazy, so all the windows are closed. We might get a little bit sweaty tonight, but we got the pizza sweats. And here to enjoy the pizza talk with me, Caitlin Cooper. How you doing, Caitlin?
I'm good. It's hot here too. It
Wait,
is. It got up to 70 today. It set like a 40-year record for temperature. So everybody who thought it was too cold at All-Star Weekend, you should have waited a week.
That actually, the exact same thing happened in Toronto as well, because it was like crazy in Toronto in 2016, so cold. And then right afterwards, it was super, super warm. I wasn't in Toronto at that point in time. Mixel Qual says, what does 70 mean? Same thing for me. I don't operate in Fahrenheit. Raptors fan says, what is 70? We need Celsius. Do you have the in your head?
I don't. I'm sorry. I didn't really think about that.
I think it's probably like plus 14. That's what I'm going to guess. And I'm going to look it up while you give us your thesis on the game at large. And I'm going to look up the translation from
my thesis on the
Celsius.
game at large is that foul that Andrew Nembhard committed against Scottie Barnes on that final possession epitomizes that entire game for the Pacers. The fact that the ball was inbounded, if you were going to foul, you could have inbounded it and fouled right away, but they let Scottie get a dunk, and then Nembhard fouls after the dunk.
Oh, wait. Okay, wait. 21 degrees? It was 21 degrees in Indiana today?
It was warm. It's warm in my house because I was going to turn the air on. It's like 76 in here right now, so I'm hot too.
Oh my God. Yeah,
I'm wearing a tank top, but I felt like that was really inappropriate to sit here and wear.
I did it for Bruce Brown reasons, but yeah, I don't care about alienating any climate change deniers in chat. We got something going on. Anyway, for the people, that's Poe right here. That's where he is for anybody.
I don't have any dogs to show. I apologize.
Well, that's okay. I only have Poe, a few weeks out of the year. So, yeah, fouls, etc. What did you think about? Let's talk about Scottie Barnes. We'll keep it with the stars. We'll talk about Scottie, then we'll talk about Tyrese. And I think that they had almost polar opposite types of aggression in this game. Thoughts on Scottie?
Yeah, two major thoughts on Scottie. Remember when we did the podcast on American Thanksgiving and you asked me, like, should the Raptors be doing more wing initiation at the time with Pascal and Scottie? And I said the phrase, pigs get fed, hogs get slaughtered, and that sometimes like it may not be about Scottie, it may be about the things around Scottie, and that there's external reasons why if you tick that up, that it might cause other defensive issues that you might not go to it as much. Tonight, I found myself thinking they probably could have gone to that as much as they wanted to, especially when Pascal was guarding him. It's beyond me why Pascal is still chasing over the top of screens, but here we are. And that's how they got that lob right to Pirtle. I feel like Scottie probably could have done about anything you wanted to with that. But the other, I mean, I guess I'll let you talk to that. I have another point to make, but if you have thoughts on Scottie pick and roll and Pascal chasing over on screens, please weigh in.
Well, I also was surprised to see there was the one wide open drive into the lane that Scottie got as well when Tyrese jumped at a pump fake. Scottie is shooting, I think, 24% from three since the Pascal trade, maybe 23%. He's shooting, I think, 16% since the trade deadline. He's just like, he's not been shooting the ball well. You probably don't have to go jump after that. And the exact same thought process goes to Pascal. Is like, Pascal is not as slinky around screens as he used to be. So one, that's not even necessarily a strength to go to over other things. And then secondly, there was a quote from early on in the season where Darko said, like, well, if Scottie's drawing closeouts or getting down towards the rim, like, God help you. He's a big boy. And you see it, like, he didn't shoot the ball well in this game. And, his field goal percentage has been down as of late as he adjusts to new types of defense and being like the primary guy. But he's able to pursue his misses. He's such a physical presence going downhill. Why would you surrender the lane to him? And yet the lane was surrendered, I found. But you're the Indiana expert. I'll say it's not that often that Scottie has the lane surrendered to him. This is maybe more unique to Indiana. So if you could speak about it from your point of view, thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I thought the other big point about Scottie was the Scottie plus bench minutes from the first half in particular, because the Pacers like to run like a brief spurt where they're going to put and kind of just let TJ McConnell run wild, where they don't play Pascal and they don't play Tyrese, and it's an all bench unit. They had nobody in that unit who could guard Scottie, not a single soul. So it's Doug McDermott for like 3 possessions in a row. And the funny thing is that Scottie didn't dominate Doug McDermott. He was dominating with his passing around Doug McDermott. So like just the difference that makes for Toronto's offense now from, earlier in the season when you and I talked about like why are defenses pressing up against Scottie or against, Jakob Poeltl at the elbow, is because they don't have guys who can rise and fire off of DHOs. They don't have all these off-ball movers. The off-ball movement from Agbaji and Grady Dick was the X factor in this game. Like, to me, like watching the Pacers defense, they weren't handling that at all.
That's like bang on. That's kind of in my early coverage. I kind of got like clowned on a little bit for talking about, because Grady wasn't hitting that many threes.
Mm-hmm.
And here I was talking about how much I love his game, because like every decision is the right decision as an off-ball mover. But Fruit, it flowered a little bit. He shot 404 from downtown, which of course helps. He's shooting close to 48% over his last 17 games as a Raptor on almost 4 attempts a game in under 20 minutes, which helps. He's shooting almost 80% at the rim in the same amount of time, which helps. It all helps. But he's wheel greasing. He's slipping through cracks. He's making everything easier.
He slides into every passing window. Like there was so many times where he probably could have touched the ball even more than what he was, because he was cutting through the lane and nobody was tagging him. He was sliding up and lifting from the corners and nobody, like he was constantly in the eye line of Scottie. He was always there. And now you didn't always need that release valve, because sometimes the lane was right available to you and you could go right to the rim if you're RJ Barrett or if you're Scottie Barnes, but he was making himself on the ready. So, and just, I don't really think that it should be so easy that if you're a DHO operator, all you have to do is pivot and wait for the guy to curl around you to make a late pass. Like there's this thing with Ben, like obviously Ben had a tremendous shot making game, but like he's the type of person that he can win the initial battle. Like he'll compete really hard and deny that initial handoff, and then he relaxes. And the Raptors got so much low hanging fruit of the Pacers, like denying the very first action extremely hard and then relaxing and just letting that guy cut behind them or letting them curl around an off ball screen. And it's just, like I said, it's just a big contrast for me as somebody who hasn't watched every single Raptors game this year to look back at the beginning of the year with what the old iteration of this team was and then watch what that offense looked like tonight.
I'm sure you remember it. And it was the one where RJ got the dunk sitting under the rim, where he and Scottie both had Pascal 2-on-1 just off of an off-ball thing. And I think it was Tyrese chased over the top.
That was Ben.
Yeah, okay. I'm left confused often. I know we talked about and we had some hope for Indiana's defense, and there's stuff in Indiana to make stuff work. There's stuff. Mm-hmm. And it's like the first thing you got to have is stuff. But the activity of the stuff, the usage of the stuff, attention to detail of the stuff is not necessarily very good. You
want to know something about that though? I literally just wrote an article about their game over the Mavericks last night that finally there's attention to detail in the fourth quarter and they reeled off a 20-4 run, and maybe this will be something to build off of. And it was just, you never know. It's a nightly adventure, but continue.
We'll get to Tyrese in a little bit. We were talking about Scottie. I kind of want to use this as an opportunity because I think there's 2 really cool intersections here. Pascal Siakam is now shooting a higher percentage from 3-point land than Scottie Barnes on the season, which if you had been here after, 23 games in the season where it was like Scottie's at 42% on 6 attempts a game, Pascal's at like 17% or something like that. To get to this point is nuts. 3-point shots, there's a lot of variance, but also kind of how people perceive 3-point percentages. Even though Pascal's higher, Scottie's been so much more useful, such a better 3-point shooter this year because of the above the break frequency and because of the overall volume and
the type of threes that he's taking.
Exactly. Sure. Super important. And then I wanted to parlay that into Doug McDermott being a facsimile of Buddy Hield. Like, yes, Doug is shooting like 20% as an Indiana Pacer, but I'm sure there are some people who looked at that and thought, oh, it's like Buddy. You just go do it like Buddy. But I kind of want you to, I'm asking you to explain why it's so different, why that isn't the case.
Yeah, let's start with Scottie and Pascal first. So, like, I mean, I watched a game earlier this year where I think it was the in-season tournament game against Boston where Darko actually ran like a late game play to bounce Scottie Barnes into the corner to attempt a three late in the game. Like that was wild to me given what his shooting was a year ago and when he wasn't even looking at the rim. So like that type of stuff, you're not getting that type of movement shooting from Pascal, at least not in the Pacers offense. But you did see early on that they had Pirtle in a very deep drop. Miles was making some threes out of the pick and pop. Darko takes a timeout, and out of that timeout, they flip-flop that matchup, and now Pirtle's on Siakam. And the very first play, Siakam cuts to the top of the key and makes that three. And as you said, I think he's around like 44%, maybe even since like December 1st. The numbers are very strong for him on above the break threes.
Pascal was 47% overall in his last 19 games as a Raptor. I think he's 43% as a Pacer. And I think it's 45% on above the break. I can't remember the above the break three numbers, but yeah.
Because 3-point percentage isn't like a proxy for spacing.
Exactly.
So I looked up after Darko's impassioned speech about Scottie being an all-star in the face of the league. I looked on Second Spectrum at what his short closeout rate was, and it had changed pretty dramatically from last year in terms of, for people who don't know, like how many of his closeouts are the defender coming and stopping short against him. It's much lower this year than it was last year, which tells you that there's been a change in defensive perception based on what he's done this year. There really hasn't been that same shift for Pascal. Like it's great. Like if he can step out there and hit wide open shots and make some above the break catch and shoot threes that come to him in those inflow situations, that's good, but they don't really guard him. Like a play that I can point to is like sometimes they'll run angled pick and roll between Tyrese and Miles. And just the other day, Pascal cut from the opposite corner, like a shallow cut to the top of the key. Like if that's a shooter, that's great because you're removing the low man. There's not going to be any tagger there anymore. For Pascal, it still worked out though, because he ended up he made a quick swing pass to Ben. And because Ben's there and now there's nobody in the corner, Ben now has the option that he can attack middle or he can attack baseline. So it's still a good action, but you can tell that the defense isn't responding to it in quite the same way. And some of that probably comes from the fact that Scottie was running some pick and roll. He was hitting some pull-up threes, clearly not at the same rate as the catch and shoot threes, but in terms of what the defense is responding to. And then to your point about Buddy and Doug, like, yeah, all movement shooters aren't created the same. So just like on a very basic level, like Doug is somebody who really needs to start actions in the left corner because he wants to fly off of a stagger or whatever, going to his right, so that if he needs to put the ball on the floor, he wants to do it to the right to finish on the right side of the rim. Buddy is a little bit quirky in that he's the opposite. A lot of times the Pacers could run actions for him to come up out of the opposite corner, which fits very well with TJ McConnell because TJ McConnell wants to Nash. He wants to cut and drive underneath the right side of the basket. So for Buddy to like set a ghost screen for TJ was a little bit cleaner fit than it necessarily is for Doug. And then I think probably people can look at it too and say like, there were some moments where Pirtle was switching completely out to Tyrese. And in the past, when Tyrese would get those switches versus a big, the very first thing that the Pacers are going to do is Buddy's going to go set a ghost screen for that, so that there's a little bit of a hesitation against that big so Tyrese can create separation or he can hit the switch pocket. Now either nobody goes and runs and does it, or there's not the same amount of gravitational pull. There's not the same screen craft as what Buddy has in terms of, do I actually need to hit and hold this? Should I just be at a full sprint that runs with me? So that stuff with Doug hasn't really quite come along quite yet. I mean, I still have some faith that he can replicate some of it because I've seen what he's done in a Rick Carlisle offense when he played in Dallas before. And I've seen what he's done with the Indiana Pacers, but he's also somebody who he pairs better like with Scottie and what Grady was kind of doing, in that like playing with Sabonis with a wavelength as a DHO operator, coming and flying off of screens. Buddy's somebody who's better running in transition, sprinting to the 3-point line and operating as the screener whether in stack, whether as a ghost screener. So there's quite a few differences between the two of them.
So I want to talk about the best movement shooter in this game, Grady Dick.
Yeah, for sure.
I asked you about Grady last time. You had mentioned like kind of wanting to see more, like just more film overall, but you know, it's sometimes it's fledgling minutes for a rookie. You saw probably one of his 3 best games of the season. Not only was he like efficient, not only was he effective, but he won his minutes, which has been kind of a recurring theme. He in continuous motion offense that is, you know, built off of the 0.5 ethos, which again, to listeners, that is not everything. Almost every team, you will hear them preach it, except for probably the New York Knicks, who won't do it. And otherwise, every team is like, make a quick decision so that you can build on advantages to create like the moment of ultimate leverage in a half-court possession. He fits great into all of that. I've been really, really impressed with what he's been able to do. Kind of, I need your thoughts on Grady overall tonight.
Yeah, I mean, I went back and did watch the game that he played against Atlanta as well, this game was impressive. That one was probably a
That
little
was
bit
my
more
power
impressive.
outage game.
Yeah, though I
Yeah.
will say that, like, just for people who don't know, the Atlanta Hawks give up the most points out of cuts of, I think, any team in the tracking era. Like, literally, they are incredibly bad. Like, Obi Toppin, I think, scored 12 points off of cuts in them in a game, which is the worst. That's like the worst mark in the league, and that was just a piece of how many the Pacers scored against them. Their stances make no sense on the backside. Their pick and roll things. But besides that, Grady tonight, like his ability to make like that little pocket pass when two defenders commit to him, that's
To Kelly.
yeah, and he did
Jammed
that.
it.
He did that in the Hawks game too once. I think when I was watching, I just
That
watched
was
his
what
minutes
I
back.
wrote about a decent amount out of summer league as well. Is like, he is a shooter, but he's also a shooter who you can reliably expect to make like really great reads on empty side stuff because of that, that's a lot more than some shooters give you, especially with like a little bit more size too, to make the
And
over the top read.
I think another thing that stood out too is that there was times early in the season, preseason, and then just some stuff that I heard from workouts where like physicality bothered him. Where like if he needed to
Big
set
time.
up his guy on a DHO or set up his guy on off-ball screening actions, I've noticed from him that he's been better at like the wait, fake, sprint aspect of that, and that you're waiting for the screener to actually come set that screen. You're using a misdirection cut to actually set up your guy, and then you're going so that the physicality isn't bothering him as much because he's losing the guy ahead of the action instead of the guy staying attached and now he's bumping me off my route, like if that makes sense. So I noticed that a
Yep.
couple times against Atlanta and then once or twice tonight. And then of course it also helps when you're being defended by Jarris Walker and you're in the strong side corner and Kelly Olynyk pops and Jarris stunts off the strong side corner, and then all you have to do is back cut behind that. I think that works pretty well. Efficient offense.
As you're talking about is like the physicality and kind of like the gamesmanship of getting open in the NBA. It's a learning curve. It's no different than the line of scrimmage in the NFL. Hands, pressure, like strength. And that's something I talked to Grady about at Summer League. It's something I talked to him about at the start of the season. And he mentioned kind of like they're working on moves up top for him to work on to get loose. And then of course there's just the natural, rising strength that he's going from 19 years old into like a man, the man's body, whatever terms people usually attach to these types of things. He's getting stronger. So there's like technique and strength that are kind of coalescing at this point, and that we're seeing, I think, the effects of that all over the court. And for a guy who has such tremendous feel for the game, to have that kind of mesh at the same time as the 3-point variance coming around, it's led to a lot of impact really quickly. And the Raptors are a team that are like 10 games out of the 7th seed, like 3.5 games out of the 10 seed. They're not world beaters, but they can find their way to wins. They can find their way to good minutes. And Grady increasingly is a part of those because of how he kind of like knows to cheat defensively at some time, to do the early work defensively so that his athleticism isn't put out on an island. All this kind of stuff, really, really impressive. The playmaking is popping, the shooting's popping, all of the little wheel greaser stuff is popping.
He can walk the tightrope under the basket pretty impressively too. Like if he
He's
starts to get
very
pushed,
good
then
on the
he can make like
baseline.
a little connective pass right there. I like that.
Well, you're a fan of Josh Kodnera's work as a scout,
Mhm.
and he was, I don't know, like probably over a year at this point in time. Maybe it was January. He was talking to me about Grady last year, and he was talking about like how good he is at splitting the weak side zone from the baseline, like
Yeah.
airborne under the basket, and to like see where the guy's cheating to get airborne, and to make that decision is like, am I swinging it out above the break? Am
Yeah.
I going corner? He's really creative passing in some of those like man advantage situations. And I think that stuff is just going to keep popping.
He also like
And
puts in work before he puts the ball on the floor sometimes too. Like he has a very subtle shimmy move on his gather at times, and then he can put
he
the ball on the floor with his left.
he had a stutter rip the other game.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
I saw him do
He's
that once at Kansas where he did a stutter rip into a step back to his left. And I was like, that's sick. And then I didn't really see him do it that much. I never got to see him do it at Summer League. Maybe he did, but
Grady
I didn't watch
Butler.
every Raptors game. But
He's going to terrorize teams from the short mid range for years and lead a plucky Heat team to the finals or something like that. I don't want to project too much of Grady's game or whatever, but the things that I have projected early on in the season, like I remember I was on Blake's Blue Jays Sportsnet show, and it just so happened to be the day of the draft. And he was like, "Who do you like?" I was like, because Grady, we had heard that he had like the workouts. I was like, well, I like Grady a lot, and he's had 2. And so I think the Raptors like him a lot too. If he falls, and then he was there at 13, we were at the draft party. Trey screams, "Messiah's back." And it was pandemonium. Everyone starts chanting Dick.
that's
Very
funny.
funny, very juvenile. But yeah, I'm very, very happy to see his game coming around, because it was like nasty business for a little while. When you're a shooter shooting like 21 or 22%, that's tough.
Yeah.
And Corey Kispert had the exact same thing when he came into the league too. I mentioned that earlier on in the season. Is like
It's like all core strength. It's
Yeah,
like all core strength. He had no arch on his shot for a long time.
Yeah, exactly. And Grady might not be as handsome as Corey is, but I think he can end up being a meaningfully better player. You mentioned Ochai, and speaking of handsome people, you mentioned how his cutting was particularly effective. This was probably his best game as a Raptor, first or second. Not that the catalog is very deep right now, but kind of your thoughts on Ochai, because you mentioned how impressed you were with the cutting.
Yeah, I mean, it was like I said, it was a lot of counters of if they're going to overplay this handoff, then the big's just going to pivot, and then he just used a late cut and cut those passes over the top. Then there was also some chin cuts that were miscommunicated between Pacers a couple times. A lot of times, like even out of the halftime, this has nothing to do with that. But how do you get beat that bad on a cross screen for Scottie Barnes? Like every game I watch this, and I'm just like, I'm at a loss to explain why this is happening at this point. I don't understand it.
You see guys like will navigate screens sometimes worse than you'll see it in pickup, and you're just like, what? How could you do? Like, I understand it's a long season, it's an absolute slog. I get it, but also, and you play a much longer game. These guys are much better, much faster. You see it at court level. You understand the difficulty, maybe a little bit better, but yeah, the simplicities. Being killed by the simplicities is really, really tough. So
yeah, because these aren't actions. Like a lot of times they get beat by actions that are not actions that should work in the NBA. They're actions to set up other actions. There's actions that it's a cut to get that person to sag off. Yes, exactly. I've written a whole article about why they can't defend a slice screen and how, that's really just set up to get you a lead going into a handoff a lot of the time, but you don't really need to get to it against the Pacers. There was a brief window where they were better at it, but tonight it was not tonight.
Can I ask you a question that isn't necessarily about basketball, and then we can talk about Tyrese, who second time in a row that we get to be like, what's going on with Tyrese kind of thing. It's the pizza party game. We had a question: pineapple on pizza, yay or nay?
Yay.
Yay?
I'm in favor. I know you don't like pineapple, so you aren't going to like it because you don't like pineapple in general.
I don't like pineapple.
Because you told me that about my popsicle podcast, that you would not eat a pineapple popsicle. So I'm assuming that you wouldn't eat it on pizza either. But I would eat it.
Okay. And what's the best pizza around where you are? In Indy, do you have a best pizza spot in Indiana?
I mean, I haven't been to a ton of them in Indy. There's one that I wanted to go to, but I didn't get into that particular place the last time I was down there. But I like 800-degree pizza up in the northern part of the state. It's like Neapolitan style. That's what I like. So that's where I go.
There's a pizza spot in Toronto that Blake and I always get when we watch games together or just do anything together. I think it's called Blondie's. And there's this, I can't remember the name of the pizza. It's really good though. It has honey on it, jalapeno, and like cheese and pepperoni.
What's the style of the pizza? Are we talking like, is this New York style? Is it Detroit style? Is it, or maybe there's Toronto style pizza? I don't know. I don't want to sound super ignorant here.
I'm the ignorant one. I don't really like, I know there's like styles of pizza. I only know Chicago because I've had
the worst one. The worst one.
when I was in Chicago, I had deep dish pizza, and I was like, okay, I get it. It's like lasagna or something. I don't know. There's like a lot of tomato in here.
It's not good.
Um, I didn't like it as much as regular pizza. But what
No.
is New York? Does that just mean it's a big slice? It's like
No,
it's a
it's
New
like
York
thin. It's like
slice of
thin
pizza.
crust. So like Detroit style would be like
Oh,
rectangular. That's like pan, and then Chicago would be
oh,
deep dish, and New York's like thin crust, and then Neapolitan would be like the classic like Italian. Like
okay.
think of like margarita pizza
Yeah, yeah.
style. Yeah.
Okay, so I've had all of those. I can rank them. Um, the town I grew up in had like 4 restaurants in it. For the people who don't know, there's almost 400 people in the watching right now as we talk about pizza. Like the video while you're here, but in the small town I grew up in, there was only like 4 restaurants. One of them was a Greek restaurant. Rest in peace to Bob. But he did Detroit style pizza. He did square slices, so that's what I grew up with. I prefer thin crust above
Yeah.
all else.
Yes,
And
that's the
also, like,
correct answer.
margarita pizza is also it bangs. I like margarita pizza as well. So, yeah. Nesta says most Toronto spots are either NYC style or Neapolitan. Yeah, Blondie's is NYC style, I would guess, and it's awesome. I've had it with Blake. Let's talk about Tyrese Halliburton, unless you have
Let's
any other
do.
pizza thoughts.
No, I don't.
What okay, I'll give you a Caitlin type of question. What kind of pizza is Tyrese Halliburton right now? And what type of pizza do you wish he was?
He's a confusing pizza, whatever that is. Yeah, I mean, you pretty much hit the nail on the head in the last time we talked because you pointed out that he was very hesitant attacking closeouts in the last game on Valentine's Day.
What is happening?
Yeah, so he talked about this, and you could tell. And then I made a video briefly about how they've been using Andrew Nemhart in the dunker spot, and I brought it up because it was tangentially related. In that he said that because his hamstring injury was in his left leg, and because he didn't point this out, I'm pointing it out. He's very quirky, and that he is a right-handed shooter who will more often move to his right when he's doing escape dribble threes or if he's stepping back. So because the hamstring was in injury is in his left leg, to launch and plant off of that leg and to create separation, you could see in a lot of games that, like, not that he didn't take those shots at all, but there was places where he could have taken those shots and he did not take those shots. So when he came back and looked pretty decent the other night against Detroit, he was like, hey, I didn't make those 2 shots, but I did take them. And I'm feeling 100%, like my minute restriction's gone. And then he was, had a fine game against Dallas yesterday. And then tonight, I don't know. Like, I'll ask you, what was your opinion, like, independent of Tyrese, what was your opinion of Emmanuel Quickley's point of attack defense? Like, don't think about it in the context of what you know of Tyrese Halliburton. Just evaluate the defense. Was it good? Was it sticky? Was it?
No. Like,
But yet, there were possessions where Tyrese was taking a reset dribble against this point of attack defense, and I don't think he needed to be at all, and yet he was.
As people well know, I watch like a decent amount of Indiana games for a guy who's not a league-wide writer, and this is not fully actualized Tyrese right now.
No.
And like that doesn't mean that anything is. It's not a comment on like his ceiling or anything like that, but it's a comment on what's been happening lately. Especially, there's like way more passivity. That he's less able to turn the corner. When he is turning the corner, it's happening like slower, and I don't think defenses are loading up more, but defenses are more capable of getting to the spots. And he's a lot more cautious trying to like play make against a disadvantaged defense. And he's the linchpin and he is everything for the offense to drive it forward. And now that everything is like kind of like getting out of sorts for him, you can tell all of the indecision that accompanies what the Pacers are trying to do. And like, I thought Pascal did a great job working like offensively out of a lot of these advantage situations. And Matherin's shot making was like heroic in this game. But the offense overall, and especially in the half court, was nothing to sneeze at. It was nothing super impressive in this game. And until Tyrese like gets back to form or full health, like these 2 for 11 games, minus 16, 1 of 6 from 3, like 7 assists, no rebounds. It's just, that's not Tyrese Halliburton. Like it is, but that's not.
Can I tell you something?
Yeah.
I think that's the worst game he's played since he's been traded to the Pacers. And the reason why is because other games where maybe he didn't have the best shooting night, I can usually go back and watch the film, or I can watch it live and be like, okay, Jaden McDaniels did something different tonight. He was mixing in some unders and he was surging out from underneath them. Tyrese is somebody who is not, at the time, not wired to be score first. He's very pass first. This set him off his rhythm. Or I can watch Boston. I'm like, they're weaking every single pick and roll. The Pacers are counterintuitive, or I mean proactive, and they're running all the picks for him to automatically get to his left. This has reoriented the offense a bit. Or I can look at some defensive adjustment, whether it was the Lakers in the in-season tournament, and being like, okay, Anthony Davis's length is really bothering him. Tonight, I don't think there was really much that the Raptors were doing defensively at all that was bothering him. And yet I'm watching them run like a flat pick and roll arrangement with Nembhard in the dunker spot again, which has been something that's been a pretty valuable tweak for them of late. And he's not reading the crackback rotation. Like, he's just going in and trying to score, which I will give this credit to Scottie Barnes. Like, very good rotations from him on those, that he's not stepping up to the defense, that he's helping laterally. Like, that's very smart and tricky to have to navigate as the guard.
So many people screw that up, I think, is like putting yourself in a position to affect once the player makes the decision with the ball, rather than being there to like catch up to the action. And like that's the type of stuff that like Scottie, with his strength and his length, when he makes those, and like he has so much pop at the rim, 5 blocks in this game. His blocks have been like insane this season, but those are the types of decisions that really like take these things to the next level. So I'm really glad you brought that up. But yeah, the Haliburton stuff is weird because sometimes I sense like and it is maybe fits and starts getting used to what it looks like without Buddy, since that was like such an automatic.
That's changed his role.
Yeah. There's like sometimes a lack of proactivity from the rest of the Pacers, I find. Maybe some of that is due to like skill set. Maybe some of that is due to like unfamiliarity with like the new roles, etc. But there's just like a lot of meat on the bone. And you can tell, like, to use the term I use on almost every podcast, like feckless sometimes. Like these Tyrese actions that he used to be like, you run an action with Tyrese, something's happening. Just not enough has been happening for the Pacers. And that's maybe even underselling it to frame it like that lightly, I suppose.
Yeah, because I mean, you're seeing him being used as a stack screener more in these games than ever before, because he's the best movement shooter on the floor. And because sometimes teams are face guarding him or teams are trapping him, so they give him a way to shake loose that isn't him being hounded all the way up the floor, and then Nembhard's doing it. And Nembhard, people know, I think he's a wonderful passer. I think he has a lot of potential. But I don't think you just totally want to be using and they're not, but like using that volume of Tyrese as the screener in those types of plays, especially if you're not necessarily, some people on the team are better than others. The things that we were talking about Grady earlier, about me saying him getting into the eye line and getting into those passing windows. Mm-hmm. Also, just like sometimes a simple wing to wing exchange that can occupy the defense a little bit more if you're not going to have, somebody the caliber of Buddy anymore to just occupy that attention by reputation alone sometimes. Like, there's people that if like you're running Chicago and Tyrese is coming out of the corner, some of them will wing exchange and some of them will not. And that can pretty dramatically alter what the spacing is on that action when he goes to get downhill with speed coming into those. So you can notice also that spots.
The really big swing in this game too is this just wasn't Nembhard's best game. Like a huge reason why the Pacers were able to beat the Raptors 2 weeks ago is because Nembhard was awesome. Yeah. Like, not like, I think it was 8 shot attempts. He was 5 for 8 in that game with 5 assists. And you could tell that like the shot making on the inside was going well. He was like 2 for 3 from downtown. In this game, he's 5 for 14. The assist, he had 1 or 0 assists in this game, I believe. Yeah, 1 assist in this game. When he got deep into the teeth of the defense was like, okay, if you're going to make that shot in the middle, take it. And the touch just wasn't there. Nembhard is the type of guard who, like, I think projects as the way, like, he's one of the best defenders on the Pacers. I think you've said he's the best at times before. He can really sew up that second guard position, but he's just not fully there yet for like every game. Like these games, he's able to like save the backcourt sometimes. It just wasn't there tonight. And he probably, if Nembhard has his game, the Pacers could have won this one. But he didn't have his game, and neither did Haliburton. Haliburton had like his worst game of the season, as you said.
There's times where Nembhard too, like he's so nuance with what he does, and he'll use head fakes and he'll use shot fakes, but he doesn't actually use the shot fake. Like, and he plays physical. It's very strange sometimes. Like, he'll go in and use the shot fake, and then instead of actually like making contact, he'll fade away from it after he's gotten the person in the air. So he needs to fully, yeah, exactly, take
There's
advantage
there's
of the advantage that he's just gained.
there's a lot of players who like they're too efficient in their motion to sell things sometimes. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
the way I think about this, not to think like I'm not an NBA player, I'm not even close, but like there's that video I put out on Twitter of me teaching a leg the like J crossover, like the like in and out behind the back move that
Yeah.
Jamal Crawford always had. And mine is like almost closer to like an actual in and out than it is like the sweep and push.
The fake
Because
behind the back into the
when
dribble.
I'm doing that, I feel it. I'm like, I don't want to carry the ball. And I was always very fundamental about avoiding carries. And I was always very fundamental about like as a player playing against like college level guys is like, I don't want to like cheat the game. I'm going to like keep no carry, no push off, all that kind of stuff. But you realize like all the best players cheat it, carry the ball, push off. And like, I think Nemhard could benefit from being like a little more egregious in what he tries to get off in like some of those moves, like whether it's like the handle or the shot fake or all that kind of stuff is like it doesn't have to be that efficient. You're good enough that you can like add a little bit of salesmanship onto your stuff.
Yeah.
But that might be counterintuitive for him because he's just so rapid and able to get into the lane. Like you just want to follow that through line. It's like I'm the guy who gets downhill. Oh, he's so good. This wasn't his best game, but yeah. Can we talk about RJ Barrett? I'm gonna ask you, did you read the piece on RJ that I did
I
on
did.
his
I read it.
passing?
Yeah.
Okay. Given what you have learned after reading the piece and tonight's game, what did you think about RJ's driving process and his passing process?
I mean, I would like to know how many passes he actually needed to make in this game because it didn't feel like many.
11 to 16 is pretty good eating. Yeah.
Felt like he was just bulldozing people over to me, like a lot of stuff in transition. People just letting him get all the way to his left again, all the way to the rim.
That's like my
Genuinely, like
politics.
off the top of my head, I can't remember a passing read. And like I did read your article. I know that this has improved for him, but like off the top of my head, I genuinely can't remember one.
He has gotten really good, and it happened a few times in this game of like understanding for some reason with the Raptors instead of the Knicks. You know, there's a few reasons that have propped up why. I got a little bit of pushback like from RJ. I got a little bit of pushback from like RJ fans. Even someone had cited like, well, this is what RJ was like at Duke. And that could be true, but I have a tough time kind of reconciling that because I'm like, well, we're 320 NBA games deep. It's tough to look at the college sample size and say like that's the player versus like this being the player, you know, all that kind of stuff. But RJ has shown this kind of stuff before in flashes. It's happening more regularly now, but the way he's able to proactively create passes, I think is different than what it was in New York. And there's a clear, like, he's much more he has a much more concise and clear understanding of where he's going to get to on a possession to possession basis, how that's going to affect the defense, and whether that creates like the shoot to the corner or the lay down, or if it's something above the break, or even he has like the push pass out to the same side, right or left. It's been very impressive. But yeah, in this game, like 5 assists, yes. Some of it is just handing the ball off. And 11 of 16 from the field, 2 of 3 from downtown. He's a bull in a china shop. And the Pacers are china shop owners without access to a lawyer to pursue litigation.
How much of this do you think is schematic?
I mean, when I talked to him about it, he had said that he appreciates playing Darko's style. I think that the continuous motion is helpful. We talked about this last time we podcasted, though, like a couple weeks ago. There's also, of course, the factor of like he's the lefty, and lanes are different on the court. Josh Codanera, our favorite scout, he tweeted that out like as soon as he joined the Raptors, something he was looking forward to. That's why he gets paid the big bucks. That's why I go to him for the Grady Dick evaluation before he gets drafted by the Raptors. But he's been really impressive. And in this game, he was just way too much for the Pacers. as they were focused on other things, and he just bludgeoned them, which was a really strong mix to have 24 and 5 from RJ on high efficiency, almost 70% from the field, as you have not the most efficient game from Scottie, but 21, 12, and 12, and 5 blocks, which was
I
nuts.
will say it wasn't helpful that Aaron Nesmith was out, because
That's
he at least could have attempted to guard better than what was going on. Ben Shepherd also didn't have quite the same caliber of game as he had up in Toronto either. So that was another drop off. And then there was also some very adventurous Jarris minutes going on.
I saw your tweets about it. You're like, okay, it's time to try Jarris. And then you're like, Jarris has been out there too long. I think
I was just saying that they were going to try Jarris. Jarris is a very controversial topic, Samson. I try to stay away from the Jarris topic lately.
Well, we got 4 minutes and 30 seconds of it. And from my eye, because it doesn't matter to me whether I upset a few Indiana fans who are high on Jarris. I know I think it's Phoenix Play Z who's in this chat after most games, who's really high on Jarris. But obviously this wasn't the game for Jarris. We've seen games for Jarris where it's like 3 quick threes in succession, like an offensive rebound, hanging around the hoop for some opportunities. And you're like, hey, this is cool.
Do you want me to give you a brief summary of what the situation with Jarris is for people in the chat here?
Yeah.
The reason why is I still believe in Jarris. I thought the Pacers should draft Jarris. Like I don't have any issue with that. He's very young. They've obviously traded for Pascal Siakam. They traded for Obi Toppin after he got drafted. That kind of put him in a bit of a tough spot to be getting regular minutes, and he's not ready to play right now. I don't think that that's a problem. I think it's fine if he goes and gets G League minutes right now. You can see when he's out there. I mean, Rick's directly asked. These were things that I wrote before Rick was directly asked. The reason he isn't playing is because they need him to cut out the willy-nilly gambles. He chases the ball way too much on defense. The fact, you don't need to stunt at Kelly Olynyk on a pick and pop
on the
three.
T-shirt?
So that was the direct quote. That's the direct quote from Rick.
I
That's
need
what
a T-shirt of that one as well.
Cut out the willy-nilly gambles. Yeah, that, and then the 1-3 that he took. Sometimes he drifts to the left like he's being hit by a gentle gust of wind on his shot. So he's improved that in the G League, and there's been you can tell that he's focused on trying to correct this problem. But tonight that was back. And then also just getting into the lane and leave. I like jump passes. I don't like them when they're you're taking a floater against the grain of your body and then you've run out of ideas and you have to pass it off your axis over to the right. It's that type of stuff where in some of the lineups we're not conducive either. If you have Pascal and Obi and Jarris out there at the same time, that's not going to be very workable. So I think that Jarris's time will come. I think he's an archetype that makes sense in the NBA, particularly in the playoffs. And by comparison to Obi Toppin, the time just isn't going to be immediate, and that's fine.
Mm-hmm. Well, we talked about Grady earlier on. Grady had a disastrous start to his NBA career. If you asked him, he's a very confident young man, and very, very intelligent and very charismatic. And he's very honest. And he'd be like, yeah, it was not what I wanted it to be at all. And Jarris, it's probably not what he wants to be either. I don't know his personality or whatever. I don't know what the quotes would be, but it's a tough start. It's in fits and starts. The NBA is really, really talented. And a lot of players who end up being really great, who are having tough starts, what's usually happening is they have 3 skills that are 97% of the way to being NBA level. And when they sit at 97, they're just not it's just not viable. The skill has to get to 100%. And if you have enough of that stuff that's sitting there, then you see. And one of the skills that he hasn't refined, I suppose, is nilly-willy gambling.
Well, I think some of it too, if people watch the NCAA tournament and they watch Houston, their defensive scheme is extremely aggressive, and they do things at the college level that NBA teams are not going to do. You're not going to pre-rotate to the degree that system does under Kelvin Sampson, and I think that that's been somewhat detrimental to Jarris because I really liked his off-ball defensive instincts in college, but when you watch them translate to a defensive system with the Pacers where a lot of the time they don't even have a low man and they're staying home on everything, it works against what his natural inclinations are. So he has to rein that in. And then also a lot of his defense is based on his hands. It's really dependent on he has very sly, deft hands. It's much more about that than it is his feet. And yet, like on the glass, he never has his hands up and ready. You probably saw that tonight. Like he'll go really deep under the glass, and then his hands will be down at his sides, and then the next thing the ball comes off the rim, and it just bobbles off. That's another issue, but lots
I
of
think
little
that's
tiny
something
things
I
to
do
clean up.
too. I don't think I get my hands up for rebounding because I think I'm always because I rebound like a guard, which means like it's opportunistic rebounding. You're gonna like shoot the gap on somebody, or you like keep your hands low so you can load up and go sky for something. It's the big man who just like keep them up.
How
They
tall
do
are
that.
you? Let me guess. Are you 6'2"?
You think I'm 6'2"? Are you nuts?
I don't know. How
No,
tall
no,
are you?
I'm not 6'2". I'm 5'11". My license says I'm 6 feet tall. I'm not fully 6 feet. When I went to like all the ID camps, I was listed at 6 feet. I'm not 6 feet. I'm just shy of it. So I also have like, there's a guy who's like a troll, but he's such a good troll that I don't block him or mute him or anything like that. Like he's so funny that I think it's almost like performance art. And under like so many tweets, he calls me short. And like he's really funny about it. So if he's listening to this, I'm 5'11". But I think he responded to the jersey swap and acted like this was actually our dimensions. Wait, how tall are you?
How tall do you think I am?
I would have guessed like tall, but now I think you're like 5'4".
No, I'm 5'6".
5'6". I was closer than
The
you. You
camera
were like,
angle on the photo for the sporting news story makes me look taller than I am.
it's the low angle, yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. Taco and Nacho Battle Channel says Samson's an FVB 6-footer. I'm taller than Fred VanVleet, so I'm a little bit more than an FVB 6 foot, and I say that because I've stood next to him. So
I guess I just thought
maybe
Trey was like really tall, so that in the photos when you stand next to him, I just assumed he was really tall. And
Trey
that you were
is
6'2".
probably just shy of like 6'4", I think.
Okay.
Which now he's 6'4", I'm 5'11". Think about how much trouble he has scoring against me when we play. Pretty funny. He's big though. But yeah, Hunk Server Leader, that's the guy's name. He says, "How tall is she? Looking like you are short king. ... All good." But yeah, he comments on like so many of them. I think it was he did the one too that you know the picture that S took of Ochai when he first joined the Raptors, and I was in the background like slack-jawed, like with my mouth open. He responded to that. He's like, "Mouth open, absolute beta." I was like, "Man, this is like, it would be offensive if it wasn't so funny." I just like
I think
it
it's
was like
funny that you think I've seen like every photo that your friends have taken.
that one had like 300 likes on it. It was truthfully quite embarrassing, but everyone was having a good laugh at my expense. I expected you to get in on that to some degree. We've moved away from basketball. Let's move back towards it. I kind of want to focus on the Raptor stuff since we're on the Raptor side of things. The center and point guard combo. I do want to talk about Jakob Poeltl before he tweaked his ankle. I thought he was excellent. I thought he was awesome. What were your thoughts on his role in a Raptors defense and also he stepped out, as you mentioned, there were the 2 possessions where he stepped out on Tyrese and nothing happened for Tyrese on those possessions. Just overall, your thoughts on Jakob?
Yeah, early on, I was like, this is the first game that these 2 teams played. Our main talking point on American Thanksgiving was me saying this was not a game for Jakob Poeltl, and he's looking a little dicey out there. Like, this is not looking good after you've given up draft capital to get this guy. But like
But
in
now
this
you're
game,
thinking I would trade a top 6 protected first
obviously,
and 2
yes.
second rounders for this guy.
Clearly, yes. But no, like I actually thought at the beginning of the game, I'm like, oh, this isn't going to be a game for him again because they had him so far in drop off of Miles, and then they cross matched it, and then Pascal was kind of giving him some work as well. And I was like, well, there's no Bruce Brown for him to flip flop onto in this game, as there was
Wait,
the one.
I have a comment here. I have to show it on screen.
Oh no,
Coco says, "Wait, so you beat Trey running and his legs are longer." Not only did I beat Trey, I smoked Trey. He wasn't close. And yeah, his legs are much longer. Sorry. Go ahead.
yeah. So there was no Bruce Brown in the Pacers lineup for him to get flip-flopped onto as he was in the prior game before he eventually was played off the court. And in this game, because in the prior one, they were much more aggressive trapping Tyrese and Pascal than they were tonight. Like they relaxed quite a bit of that from what they had done in the prior matchup. I guess they didn't want the other people to shake loose. But yeah, I mean, I thought it was a much better performance from him. And also just like it's again low-hanging fruit to go after the offensive rebounds against the Pacers, but he snatched that fruit.
YG7 has looked like K-Love guarding Steph on the wing. It was above the break, first and foremost. So
that's where they missed the ghost screen. That is where they missed the ghost screen because Tyrese is somebody who he's going to spin his tires at times when he gets switched onto a big. There's certain instances where he's really going to create separation for him shot, but he needs that minute of hesitation. He needs the switch pocket, and there's nobody running. Nobody went and ran.
Yeah. Well, also, I want to talk about like in the cultural consciousness, do you think back to like Steph versus K-Love anytime a big steps out and the big is like chopping feet and like sliding? Because it pops in my head literally every single time. Like YG7,
yeah, that's probably the one that you go to. Yeah.
Yeah. Because like I remember seeing in slow motion, like you see K-Love, he's like the hands are going, he's like trying to move and gyrate everything all at once. It's just like there's this character in Hunter x Hunter. His name is Illumi, but he has like this this fake. He has a pseudonym he goes by as Gitterrecker, and he like shakes and transforms, and that's what Kevin Love was doing when he was guarding Steph. He was just
a lot of words were just said, and I don't know what any of them meant.
Yeah. Also, OG3 says Samson, your bald head gave you an aerodynamic advantage over Trey. That could be true. Trey, shave the head if you want to get on my level, is what I say. And then Emmanuel Quickly, who was pretty aggressive getting to his spots in this game, I thought.
I mean, the transition, like that was like Emmanuel Quickly getting loose with the Knicks at times at the height of like his 6-man performances, especially like, you know, when Tyrese picks up his dribble randomly against RJ Barrett. Like people pointed out to me, they're like, well, he was waiting to make that pass because he couldn't enter it to Pascal. So Miles was flashing for the high-low pass. I'm like, I realized this. I realized he was waiting for the high-low pass. Why is he aborting his dribble?
He's doing his best.
Ugh. So he aborts the dribble, and then Emmanuel quickly ends up getting the ball and then going and making some of those transition pull-up threes. So I'm a big fan of early pull-up transition threes. He made a couple of those. And I will say, like, going back to our conversation about teams weaking him left, which wasn't a thing in this particular game, but I'm still a little bit confused by why even sometimes he has open lanes for layups and everything becomes a runner still. I don't really get that.
The layup stuff just wasn't going well at all. Like he's overextended. He's getting like sideways and angled a little bit. Everything is underhand, which, you know, there's underhand touch and there's overhand touch, and some guys have one and not the other. I think he had a really, really tough time finishing with like the high finish off the glass, and he's moved away from it a little bit. And then also the floaters just haven't been dropping as a Raptor. He really, whether it's with playmaking or whether it's with the in-between shot, he has to figure out like how he accesses his second level of dominance. Because most stars have 3, and most all-stars have like 2 for certain. And Quickly has like 1. He shoots the hell out of the basketball. And even so, his volume is a little bit limited because of his predilections, what he likes to do as like going left or right, and how teams can like funnel him to spots. But it's something I hope to see improve because he is really quick. He can get downhill. It's just like the efficacy once he gets to those spots. And so that's what I guess we're waiting for. But tonight I thought it was pretty good. You know, 8 of 16, scored the ball a little bit. Didn't create that much for others, but when Scottie was, you know, as we talked about at the very front end of this podcast, is like Scottie is creating so much of what they're doing. And the Pacers in particular have so much trouble when everything is occupied of paying attention to like, it's like what they say about bigs is like, can you chew gum and like walk? And like, then you go to the NBA if you're a big guy. The Pacers as a defense are having a tough time like chewing gum and walking at the same time, it seems. Like they're chewing gum and then they're walking. and then they're chewing gum, etc. If that makes sense.
Let me ask you a question from your outside perspective here, and since you've watched more Pacer games, how would you evaluate Miles Turner as a defender this season?
I
I
remember
know it's
you and
hard to
I.
separate. I know it's hard to separate out what the scheme was at the beginning of the year, some of the adjustments they've made, and what other players are out on the floor. But if you can, how would you evaluate just him as a defender?
We had a really interesting conversation earlier, I guess not this year, but this season, where we were talking about Miles being essential and kind of like his impact and stuff like that, and who was at fault for divergent views or expectations. And Miles, I had seen some good games in succession. And now I feel like I've seen some not so great games in succession. And for a guy who was pinned and like promoted as like kind of like a world changing center defensively for a couple years and then has always just existed in the, I guess, public consciousness as like a really good defender who just like is able to defend the rim. The numbers don't line up, and then the eye test had been slipping, and I feel like it's just maybe like slipped. I don't know. He hasn't been impressing me a ton, but the point of attack stuff isn't good either, and it's always tough to delineate chicken or the egg stuff with that. I have a tough time, particularly.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the point that I made over the summer when we talked about this is I wasn't convinced anymore that a rim protector could be your strongest link on defense. And based on things I had seen of the Pacers over the last year, obviously they made a lot of scheme changes. I think it's to the point where, like, tonight, blocks that he might have gotten in the past where he could turn over shoulder and get back and use his recovery speed, he doesn't quite get there. There's some rim protection ones where it's like if he can't get there, then it's kind of like, oh well. And I guess I should have asked a more specific question and said, like, if you were going to be using him in a defense, would you want him swallowing up pick and rolls with the action coming at him, or would you want him in a weak side rim protector role where he's rotating to the rim?
I'd
Because
probably
I
want
just
him.
as background for under Nate McMillan, under Nate Bjorkgren, the action was being funneled to him. He was keeping a pretty small radius to the rim, except if they like needed to titrate it up against like, Trae Young's going off. Now we're gonna have you step up, we're gonna have you hedge. Otherwise, it was pretty vanilla that way. Rick Carlisle is kind of the first coach who was like, hey, we're going to move you off of this. And sometimes Aaron Nesmith's going to guard the 5 and we're going to switch out and you're going to be, playing that roamer role. They did a lot of that last year. They haven't done it near as much this year. So which one do you think?
Maybe I'm caught up in like the kind of the trend, but I like the best shot blocker to be like the roamer. I
The
like a
passive
guy.
size around the rim.
Yeah, I do really like that. And I like Jakob Poeltl is a good example of that. Like a guy who just kind of like controls the action and like knows his angles. And like Jokic is also a really good example of that. Maybe even more so is like Jokic knows how to kind of like control the action defensively and will like play to scheme and will like really play to his passing angles. And so you understand what your big there is doing effectively and what he's going to try and make the offense do by directly trying to take something away. Whereas like maybe if you put a playmaker in that spot, it's a little less dependable. I'm not sure really.
I
That's
thought it
an
was a
interesting
mixed bag
question.
last year, and I wasn't sure of the answer, to be quite honest with you. I thought there was times where he seemed very unsure of himself as to whether he should be sagging off of somebody to be around the rim or be staying home. And it's like, hey, if you're being a roamer, then you need to roam. And yet I watch him in the pick and roll coverage stuff, and it's 2 versus 2 for most of the year. They do a lot of veer switching, and sometimes he gets put in very bad spots because of that. And I think that sometimes he gets more blame than he deserves. Like last night against Dallas, like Ben's veer switching, and he's starting the veer way too high out on the floor where he's already disconnected before he started to funnel that guy into Miles. Like ideally the trigger point's at the free throw line. If the ball breaks the free throw line, then you veer, then you go. If it's higher than that, then you're having to have Miles step up out of that drop and it's too
Yeah.
late and the ball handler has too much room to shoot. So there's 2 or 3 spots probably against Luka and Kyrie last night where he got put into tough positions because of what his teammates were doing with their point of attack defense. That being said, I think I'm to the point where I don't know that you necessarily want him anchoring all of your pick and roll defense to the degree that he is. The problem is like if you do it with Aaron, then you're giving up a ton of size. And I guess like this is, you've watched way more Pascal than I have. I've watched a lot of his defensive possessions over and over and over again since he's come to the Pacers. And that's probably the one thing I feel good about right now is like if he's defending a big and he switches out to the ball, I feel okay with him switching out to the ball late in the clock and containing the ball. Much else beyond that, I don't feel great about.
That's kind of what I thought was strong for the Raptors when they had that really strong start to the season was that Scottie and Pascal switched roles effectively. Is like Scottie got to be the roamer. Obviously, he started out the season like gangbusters, absolutely insane. Stocks, blocks, big time roamer. Pascal was kind of like doing a lot of switching across the top of the defense and trying to be sticky, and was sticky enough at the back end of the clock for like a lot of effective plays there, and was sticky enough at the front end to like contend and move teams onto the other actions. And then of course, as a big on the perimeter, getting beat some of the time too. The Pacers are in an interesting spot defensively for sure. So I don't know. I'm excited.
They're not going to win a lot of games if they give up this many points in the paint and they don't shoot the three well, especially against a team that can run. Like I was nervous about this game for them going into it because I knew it was on the second night of a back-to-back. I didn't know how Tyrese was going to fare coming out of the All-Star break on the second night of a back-to-back. And them facing basically a version of themselves on a night when they aren't making threes is going to be a tough row. And it was. So,
well, there's also probably something that the Pacers, I would forgive them for maybe not picking this up in the pregame scout, but there's pizza motivation here.
Yeah. I mean, that is an X factor for sure.
That's what I was thinking. Pizza motivation is one of the most important.
I can't wait till they go to the pizza places in Indy and then I get to hear more about how I apparently live in squalor and how terrible the state where I live is.
Hey, can I ask you? We haven't even gotten to talk about it. I was busy here. You were busy there. How was All-Star Weekend, just from the Indiana point of view?
I mean, they said that it was the best attended All-Star Weekend in 14 years. The rumors were correct. It was very cold. There was a lot of snow. The weather conditions were not good. But to see it at Lucas Oil and to see 35,000 people in there on Saturday night and to see like a lot of fans, like I'm sure you could hear it on the TV broadcast. Like there's a lot of booing going on for Jaylen Brown, especially in the sections where I was at. Especially when like the parquet flashed on the floor. Like I was not feeling the glove dunk. I don't know.
No, all of Jaylen's stuff, and I credit him.
There's like a 2-point bonus for being an all-star and everything.
I didn't really understand. I thought I was like, is this fixed? It felt was it important that he get to the final? And like a credit to him for being like, yeah, I'll do it again next year. He didn't seem to care that people obviously were like, these are not good dunks. You told us you like covered your eyes when you just did not do that. Like his eyes were wide open, and then afterwards he's like, it's like, dude, we saw you. There's like, if ever there was going to be a situation where you're not going to get away with it, it's the situation where like there's 18 slow motion 4K cameras trained on you. And that's the moment you think like people won't know whether you closed your eyes or not. What?
I couldn't see any of that. I didn't even know that he was trying to close his eyes from where I was at.
Sabrina versus Steph was awesome though. For whatever happens next year.
It was really awesome if you were in the arena too, because you didn't hear any of the commentary.
Oh yeah. She tied the high watermark for the men's rounds. Did she not? 26.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then what Kenny was like, why didn't they let her shoot from the WNBA line?
Have you ever shot with a women's basketball? This is a fun question. Have you shot with a women's basketball?
You as a boy play with women's basketball until senior in Canada, the 28.5.
Okay.
So I played with the women's basketball until I was 15 or 14. And then
I don't understand why this was hard to understand because I tweeted this. I didn't know any of that had been discussed. I like woke up in my hotel room, and I was like looking at my phone. I was like, what is this? I listened to the clip. I'm like, this is absurd to me. Like, because when I was growing up, my dad coached boys basketball. So I would get up at like 5 in the morning, go to their open gyms, and I would always bring my own ball. Like I didn't shoot with the 30 when I would go in there at shoot around. Like if they needed me as a body and I had to jump in as a scrimmage, I obviously played with the 30. But if I was just going there to do like my own workouts,
Did
my own
catching the
drills,
30
oh
break
yeah.
your feminine fingers?
No, but like I didn't want to. Like it's a big adjustment for the shot. Like there's way more adjustment in changing the ball than the distance. Like I could obviously bring my 28.5 to the gym and shoot from wherever the heck I wanted to. Like I don't he was like, "Well, then she should have shot with the men's ball too." I'm like, if Steph had shot with the women's ball, I'm pretty sure that would have affected him going like it's a notable change.
I would hate that. It's like if you're a shoot
Yeah.
you can shoot from a lot of different places.
Mhm.
The medium with which you enact all of your skill, the unchanging variable suddenly changes.
Yes.
Why? Kenny's a shooter.
I know,
What
like,
are
this
we
is why it was strange to me. I'm like, this commentary is bizarre. Like, I don't know. It's like maybe
I
he's never shot with the women's ball and doesn't understand how much of a difference the feel is.
I that reminds me of like, dear friend JJ Redick, who hopefully will sign us on to the most popular podcast of all time where we can be nerds. Here's the thing. He went on ESPN and had like the spat about like First Take. And then there were people who were like, if you want to do the deeper dive, he should have to do that on YouTube. And then like in my head, I was like, is this where we are? Where like Kenny Smith is saying this kind of stuff on All-Star Weekend. JJ Redick goes and talks about like pick and roll coverage on First Take. And people say, save that for YouTube. But Shannon Sharp can talk about like single fathers or like having a 2-parent household on First Take. And like, that's what we come to watch. But like JJ Redick talking about like basketball is like, save that for YouTube, pal. We're not here for that. It's like, what are you guys here for? What are we here for? Sometimes I wonder aloud.
Here's what I'll say. I pay for a lot of the content that covers that. It comes to my inbox. It's not at a website. Yours is at a website, but I also pay for it behind a paywall. And that's the point that I'll make about that.
Louis Sassman says, what are we here for? Sometimes I wonder. Louis, big day tomorrow, brother. Love you muchly. You should be getting sleep, not watching, Caitlin and I talk about, I guess, basketball and JJ Redick. Caitlin, is there anything you want to say before we get out of here?
Now I'm very curious about what Lewis's big day is.
He I'm sure you'll see something about it at some point, I'm sure. But
Okay.
is there anything you want to say? Wait,
No,
you saw the jersey swap, right? Did you like the jersey swap picture?
I did, sure. Yes.
I thought it was great. When I was putting it together, I was like, this is really funny. I like this a lot.
Is Photoshop and graphic design your passion?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, no, I'll just say what I always say, which is thank you to the listeners, however many of you there are that tolerate me every time that I keep coming to this website and talking about your basketball team. And hopefully I do it to some respect that's intelligible by comparison to Samson, who you listen to and watches far more of these games than I do. So always appreciate that, and hit the like button for Raptors Republic so that this will recommend this to other people when they come to the channel. And also, should I say something about whether you got into this at night or during the day or?
Well, you don't have to close out the podcast. But kind of like, do you have any sell yourself, please?
I'm not doing that. That's
Yeah,
not
yeah.
happening. No, I'll
Do your
just
best.
say I am, as a Raptors Republic subscriber, please continue to pay Lewis
Added
and
to the
Samson so that
YouTube
I can
chat
continue reading
is
their work.
Caitlin's Patreon is now in the YouTube chat. Feel free to go over there and subscribe to it. So if anybody, it is the
Sometimes
best
I
written
tweet
book.
things about the Atlanta Hawks, and those do better than my Pacers work. So there you go.
It's really tough. I noticed this too. Not like the graphic commentary incoming, but like promoting your work on Twitter is such a crazy thing because under like 60% of my tweets, there's an automated bot response that says, and this trigger warning, everyone, my pussy in bio. Like, you have to sell yourself on this website where this stuff happens. I just like, it's so nuts, man. But also, yeah, because they screw around with like the algorithm and all that kind of stuff. I liked it. I like working on a website because like the stuff is hosted there, people visit it.
Mm-hmm.
Having it be like it just needs to get retweets on a site where the algorithm gets like screwed around with constantly, and like you never know whether it's going to pick up or not, and there's like this nebulous $8 that some people pay for and hide it, and other people are like paying for it, but they're like, this is where you market yourself. Like the descent into like madness of the internet, it had like a 2-year period where people were like, oh, we're on the way to like intelligence and monetization, and then it was just like crazy.
Yeah, when I had that Atlanta Hawks tweet and our good friend JJ was kind enough to talk about it on his show with our other good friend Tyrese, the Atlanta Hawks Twitter account followed me, and I was like, I always knew someday that when a clip of mine blew up, it would be about the Atlanta Hawks or the Boston Celtics. That one did really well too.
The initial one on bouncing around, it was the Pacers, which made sense.
Mm-hmm.
But there was one with Miami that went pretty well as well. But I remember like that was a big thing. However many years ago at this point, you're like snapping off all these plays that the Pacers run, why they work, why they don't, all this kind of stuff. And then everyone's like, holy fuck, I didn't know people knew basketball this well and could like talk about it in rapid succession like this.
And like, if I look back at that clip now, I really wasn't saying anything that informative.
Bro is just yammering. Is that what I don't think that's true.
I think it
Like,
was. I was just like
you're
talking
being
about like
modest.
Horns Flex and like something that like 30 teams run. I was frustrated by the fact that they didn't get other options out of it, but like pretty much every team runs that.
You want to know something that's really cool? VCR says Samson and Caitlin equals prime Shaq and Kobe of Raptors in-depth analysis. And you don't even cover the Raptors. That's why you're the best in the world.
And also, you just have a really nice chat. That's true.
I've worked hard for this chat.
The Raptors fandom is always very nice to me. I think Raptors Twitter must be one of the kinder places. They're kind to me.
Yeah, well, you interact with Raptors Twitter, I think, under the house or under the framework of like Samson folk adjacent. I do a lot of house cleaning, let's say.
Oh, okay.
Raptors Twitter is nuts. Raptors coverage is nuts. Anyway, I'm not gonna get too much on it. Anyway, oh brother. For myself, Tomber, who this is my first time ever saying that word right without being like, oh, how is that said again? Because I never really took music lessons or anything like that. I've screwed this up many times. My brother used to make fun of me all the time for it. And Tomber themselves made fun of me. Anyway, I said that correctly. Says, no, we only like Caitlin. Caitlin is the person to like. And the reason why is that she is the best writer covering basketball. She will give you the analysis that you can't get anywhere else. And she will do it if you scroll up in the chat. At Basketball She Wrote, Patreon is important to support the people who do the work that you like, because this is how those people keep working. There are these massive companies that are doing these big layoffs, and somehow nobody can pay for anything or pay anyone to do anything. And there's a lot of money flying around. And a lot of people consume Caitlin's work when it comes out. She designs fantastic t-shirts. As Coco says, I have 3 of them. They comprise 43% of my weekly outfits. 42.9%, I should say. But anyway, it's important to support the people who do really good work. And if Caitlin had to stop doing work, a lot of people who do analysis would not be able to sit downstream from her takes. That's a great shirt. I'm really proud of that. And so anyway, subscribe to Caitlin's Patreon because she's the very best. That's what I have to say, I think. How's that? Does that work?
Yeah, I distracted myself while picking up the shirt, so it went well.
I was really proud of that shirt. We, like my friend,
It's a high
we paid,
quality shirt, legitimately.
we paid him to design it. We had like the Western motif, and we we're like, this is really cool. And then the art that he did, we're like, this bangs. This is sick. And then we just didn't sell very many of them. And I was like, damn. I was like, you know, when you feel like you did something, that was like what minute basketball was like feeling like you did something really good. It
Oh,
just
I have
didn't.
to ask a question. Is it minute basketball or minute basketball?
You've asked me this before, and it's minute basketball because nobody wants to say minute basketball, but it's
Well, I
both.
had an argument with somebody about this when I was wearing the shirt in Indy because I was going to take a picture by the clock that I had found and try to make a funny quip about this. And the person who was with me was like, I don't even think that's what that is. I think it's minute basketball, and this is stupid.
So get this. It's both because it was minute basketball because we also read our pieces so that people could listen to the articles. We thought we were way ahead of the curve on that, and we were to some degree. And that's the minute aspect of it. And minute was because we thought we were exploring the more minute details of basketball. But really, should have been like metaphorical basketball because we always explore basketball through the metaphorical lens. But that metaphorical basketball sounds like way too much. Like it would have been harder to market that than
wearing it next to a clock, but the picture is very bad, so it's never seeing the light of day.
damn. Lewis just types boats in chat. I can't remember. It was the boat that got stuck in the Suez Canal, and Lewis wrote about. I can't remember what the name of the boat was, but when he compared that to Ben Simmons on the 76ers, I was just like, oh my God. I was like, does the writing get better than this? He also anyway, is a great privilege to have worked on the newsletter for a year and some with Lewis, Lewis is one of the best writers I know, be it fiction or basketball, which is also why I'm looking so forward to writing with you on your Patreon during the playoffs, because, you just got to work with people who are better than you at things to get better. Lewis says, ever given. I will not grant you the ability to respond to what I just said, Caitlin. Thank you to everybody for listening, whether you got into this in the morning or at night. Have a blessed day, and goodbye.